The Northrop F-5A and F-5B Freedom Fighter and the F-5E and F-5F Tiger II are part of a supersonic light fighter family, initially designed in the late 1950s by Northrop Corporation. Being smaller and simpler than contemporaries such as the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II, the F-5 cost less to both procure and operate, making it a popular export aircraft. The F-5 started life as a privately funded light fighter program by Northrop in the 1950s. The design team wrapped a small, highly aerodynamic fighter around two compact and high-thrust General Electric J85 engines, focusing on performance and low cost of maintenance. Though primarily designed for the day air superiority role, the aircraft is also a capable ground attack platform. The F-5A entered service in the early 1960s. During the Cold War, over 800 were produced through 1972 for U.S. allies. Though the U.S. Air Force had no acknowledged need for a light fighter, it did procure roughly 1,200 Northrop T-38 Talon trainer aircraft, which were directly based on the F-5A. After winning the International Fighter Aircraft Competition in 1970, a program aimed at providing effective low-cost fighters to American allies, Northrop introduced the second-generation F-5E Tiger II in 1972. This upgrade included more powerful engines, higher fuel capacity, greater wing area and improved leading-edge extensions for a better turn rate, optional air-to-air refueling, and improved avionics including air-to-air radar. Primarily used by American allies, it remains in U.S. service to support training exercises. It has served in a wide array of roles, being able to perform both air and ground attack duties. The type was used extensively in the Vietnam War. A total of 1,400 Tiger IIS were built before production ended in 1987. More than 3,800 F-5 and the closely related T-38 advanced trainer aircraft were produced in Hawthorne, California. The F-5N/F variants are in service with the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps as an adversary trainer. Approximately 500 aircraft are in service as of 2014. The F-5 was also developed into a dedicated reconnaissance version, the RF-5 Tiger I. The F-5 also served as a starting point for a series of design studies which resulted in the Northrop YF-17 and the F/A-18 navalized fighter aircraft. The Northrop F-20 Tigashawk was an advanced variant to succeed the F-5E, which was ultimately cancelled when export customers did not emerge. Design and development. Origins. The design effort was led by Northrop Vice President of Engineering and Aircraft Designer Edgar Schmud, who previously at North American Aviation had been the chief designer of the successful North American P-51 Mustang and F-86 Sabre fighters. Schmud recruited a strong engineering team to Northrop and assigned them the goal of reversing the trend in fighter development towards greater size and weight in order to deliver an aircraft with high performance, enhanced maneuverability, and high reliability, while still delivering a cost advantage over contemporary fighters. Recognizing that expensive jet aircraft could not viably be replaced every few years, he also demanded engineered growth potential allowing service longevity in excess of 10 years. Schmud recognized that new jet engine and aerodynamic technology were crucial to these goals, such as the compact but high thrust-to-weight ratio General Electric J85 turbojet engine, and the recently discovered transonic area rule to reduce drag. The J85 engine had been developed to power McDonnell's ADM-20 quail decoy employed upon the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. This engine with thrust-to-weight ratios of 6.25 to 7.5 over various versions had a notable thrust per pound advantage over contemporaries, such as the 4.7 thrust-to-weight ratio of the J79 engine used in the F-4 Phantom. Another highly influential figure was Chief Engineer Welko Gazik, who convinced Schmud that the engines must be located within the fuselage for maximum performance. Gazik also for the first time introduced the concept of life cycle cost into fighter design, which provided the foundation for the F-5's low operating cost and long service life. The low costs involved has been recognized as an important element of the aircraft's effectiveness, defense analyst and combat aircraft architect Pierre Sprey stated in a 1982 U.S. Department of Defense report that, Increases in cost and complexity that were unnecessary to enhance air-to-air effectiveness have decreased today's effective force size per constant dollar by factors of 25 to 75, relative to the F-86's 2,000 sorties/day per $1 billion. The only exception to this strikingly adverse trend is the F-5E, which manages to produce 500 sorties/day per $1 billion. The total cost of an F-5 sortie is approximately 20% that of an F-16 sortie, even though the F-16 is a cost-effective modern fighter. This low cost was also a very deliberate strategy of Northrop in following a focused light fighter plan. A Northrop design study stated the application of advanced technology was used to provide maximum force effectiveness at minimum cost. This became the Northrop philosophy in the development of the T-38 and F-5 lightweight trainer and fighter aircraft. The flying qualities of the F-5 are often highly rated, comparable to the North American F-86 Sabre and the General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcon. The safe and predictable flying qualities of the F-5, while still maintaining high agility, was a deliberate goal of the design team. The company stated Northrop took a new approach that the initial design layout shall stress excellent flying qualities such that utilization of the complete performance envelope is available to the pilot. According to defense analyst and prominent Pentagon fighter mafia of F-16 fame, member Pierre Sprey, the F-5 was perhaps the most effective U.S. air-to-air fighter in the 1960s and early 1970s based on his published fighter effectiveness criteria. Sprey defines the key factors of fighter effectiveness in order of importance as 1. Ability to surprise the enemy without being surprised, 2. On a per-budget basis, ability to outnumber the enemy via lower unit cost and higher sortie rates and reliability, 3. Ability to outmaneuver the enemy, and 4. Once in position to fire by either surprise or maneuver, ability to attain reliable kills, weapon system effectiveness. As a prominent example of a well-implemented light fighter, the F-5 is a close match to these criteria in the time frame before beyond visual range missiles became reliable. A small visual and radar cross-section size and consequent detection difficulty often conferred the F-5 the advantage of surprise. The F-5 has the smallest planform area of any fighter in common usage. This is a critical practical combat advantage since historically about 80% of air-to-air kills do occur by surprise. The aircraft is highly cost-effective and reliable, allowing superior numbers in the air on a per-budget basis. The aircraft also has a high sortie rate, low accident rate, high maneuverability, and is armed with an effective combination of 20 mm cannon and heat-seeking missiles. The F-5 development effort was formally started in the mid-1950s by Northrop Corporation for a low-cost, low-maintenance fighter. The company designation for the first design as the N-156, intended partly to meet a U.S. Navy requirement for a jet fighter to operate from its escort carriers, which were too small to operate the Navy's existing jet fighters. That requirement disappeared when the Navy decided to withdraw the escort carriers. However, Northrop continued development of the N-156, both as a two-seat advanced trainer, designated as N-156T, and a single-seat fighter, designated as N-156F. The N-156T was quickly selected by the United States Air Force as a replacement for the T-33 in July 1956. On June 12, 1959, the first prototype aircraft, which was subsequently designated as YT-38 Talon, performed its first flight. By the time production had ended in January 1972, a total of 1,158 Talons were produced. Development of the N-156F continued at a lower priority as a private venture by Northrop. On February 25, 1958, an order for 3 prototypes was issued for a prospective low-cost fighter that could be supplied under the Military Assistance Program for distribution to less developed nations. The first N-156F flew at Edwards Air Force Base on July 30, 1959, exceeding the speed of sound on its first flight. Although testing of the N-156F was successful, demonstrating unprecedented reliability and proving superior in the ground attack role to the U.S. Air Force's existing North American F-100 Super Sabres, official interest in the Northrop type waned, and by 1960 it looked as if the program was a failure. Interest revived in 1961 when the United States Army tested it, along with the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk and Fiat-91 Guaranis, for reconnaissance and close support. Although all three types proved capable during Army testing, operating fixed-wing combat aircraft was legally the responsibility of the Air Force, which would not agree to operate the N-156 or allow the Army to operate fixed-wing combat aircraft, a situation repeated with the C-7 Caribou. In 1962, however, the Kennedy administration revived the requirement for a low-cost export fighter, selecting the N-156F as winner of the FX competition on April 23, 1962, subsequently becoming the F-5A, being ordered into production in October that year. It was named under the 1962 United States Tri-Service Aircraft Designation System, which included a reset of the fighter number series. Northrop manufactured a total of 624 F-5As, including 3 YF-5A prototypes, before production ended in 1972. A further 200 F-5B two-seat trainer aircraft, lacking a nose-mounted cannon but otherwise combat-capable, and 86 RF-5A reconnaissance aircraft, fitted with a 4-camera nose, were also built. In addition, Canadair built 241st generation F-5S under license. CASA in Spain built 70 more aircraft. F-5E and F-5F Tiger II. In 1970, Northrop won the International Fighter Aircraft (IFA) competition to replace the F-5A, with better air-to-air performance against aircraft like the Soviet MiG-21. The resultant aircraft, initially known as F-5A-21, subsequently became the F-5E. It had more powerful, 5,000 lbf, General Electric J85-21 engines, and had a lengthened and enlarged fuselage, accommodating more fuel. Its wings were fitted with enlarged leading-edge extensions, giving an increased wing area and improved maneuverability. The aircraft's avionics were more sophisticated, crucially including a radar. Initially the Emerson Electric and APQ-153, the F-5A and B had no radar. It retained the gun armament of 2 M39 cannon, one on either side of the nose of the F-5A. Various specific avionics fits could be accommodated at customer request, including an inertial navigation system, TACAN, and ECM equipment. The first F-5E flew on August 11, 1972. A two-seat combat-capable trainer, the F-5F, was offered, first flying on September 25, 1974, at Edwards Air Force Base, with a new nose, that was 3 feet longer, which, unlike the F-5B that did not mount a gun, allowed it to retain a single M39 cannon, albeit with a reduced ammunition capacity. The two-seater was equipped with the Emerson and APQ-157 radar, which is a derivative of the APQ-153 radar, with dual control and display systems to accommodate the two-man crew, and the radar has the same range of APQ-153, around 10 nmi. On April 6, 1973, the 425th TFS at Williams Air Force Base, Arizona received the first F-5E Tiger II. A reconnaissance version, the RF-5E Tiger I, with a sensor package in the nose displacing the radar and one cannon, was also offered. The F-5E eventually received the official name Tiger II, 792 F-5ES, 146 F-5FS, and 12 RF-5ES were eventually built by Northrop. More were built under license overseas, 91 F-5ES and FS in Switzerland, 68 by Korean Air in South Korea, and 308 in Taiwan. The F-5E proved to be a successful combat aircraft for U.S. allies, but had no combat service with the U.S. Air Force, though the F-5A with modifications referred to as F-5C was flown by the U.S. in Vietnam. The F-5E evolved into the single-engine F-5G, which was rebranded the F-20 Tigashawk. It lost out on export sales to the F-16 in the 1980s. Upgrades. The F-5E experienced numerous upgrades in its service life, with the most significant one being adopting a new planar array radar, Emerson /APQ-159 with a range of 20 nmi to replace the original /APQ-153. Similar radar upgrades were also proposed for F-5F, with the derivative of APQ-159, the APQ-167, to replace the APQ-157, but that was cancelled. The latest radar upgrade included the Emerson APG-69, which was the successor of APQ-159, incorporating mapping capability. However, most nations chose not to upgrade for financial reasons, and the radar saw very little service in U.S. Air Force aggressor squadrons and Swiss Air Force. Various F-5 versions remain in service with many nations. Singapore has approximately 49 modernized and redesignated F-5S, single-seat, and F-5T, two-seat, aircraft. Upgrades include new FIAR Grifo F X-band radar from Galileo Avionica, similar in performance to the APG-69, updated cockpits with multifunction displays, and compatibility with the AIM-120 AMRAAM and Rafael Python air-to-air missiles. One NASA F-5E was given a modified fuselage shape for its employment in the Shaped Sonic Boom demonstration program carried out by DARPA. It is preserved in the Valiant Air Command Warbird Museum at Titusville, Florida. The Royal Thai Air Force, RTAF, had their F-5S undergo an intensive upgrade program, resulting in the aircraft redesignated as F-5T Tigris. They are armed with Python 3 and 4 missiles, and equipped with the dash helmet-mounted cueing system. Similar programs have been carried out in Chile and Brazil with the help of Elbit. The Chilean upgrade, called the F-5 Tiger 3 Plus, incorporated a new ELTA-L/M2032 radar and other improvements. The Brazilian program, redesignated as F-5M, adds a new Grifo F radar along with several avionics and cockpit refurbishments, including the dash helmet. The F-5M has been equipped with new weapon systems such as the Beyond Visual Range Derby missile, Python 4 short-range air-to-air missile, SMKB's smart bomb, and several other weapons. Operational history. United States. The first contract for the production F-5A was issued in 1962, the first overseas order coming from the Royal Norwegian Air Force on February 28, 1964. It entered service with the 4,441st Combat Crew Training School of the U.S. Air Force, which had the role of training pilots and ground crew for customer nations, on April 30 that year. At that point, it was still not intended that the aircraft be used in significant numbers by the U.S. Air Force itself. This changed with testing and limited deployment in 1965. Preliminary combat evaluation of the F-5A began at the Air Proving Ground Center, Eglin AFB, Florida, during the summer of 1965 under Project Sparrowhawk, with one airframe lost through pilot error on June 24. In October 1965, the U.S. Air Force began a 5-month combat evaluation of the F-5A titled Skoshi Tiger. A total of 12 aircraft were delivered for trials to the 4,503rd Tactical Fighter Squadron, and after modification with probe and drogue aerial refueling equipment, armor, and improved instruments, were redesignated as the F-5C. Over the next 6 months, they performed combat duty in Vietnam, flying more than 2,600 sorties, both from the 3rd Tactical Fighter Wing at Bien Hoa over South Vietnam and from Da Nang Air Base where operations were flown over Laos. 9 aircraft were lost in Vietnam, 7 to enemy ground fire and 2 to operational causes. Although declared a success, with the aircraft generally rated as capable a ground attack aircraft as the F-100, but suffering from a shorter range, the program was considered a political gesture intended to aid the export of more F-5S than a serious consideration of the type for U.S. service. From April 1966, the aircraft continued operations as 10th Fighter Commando Squadron with their number boosted to 17 aircraft. Following Skoshi Tiger, the Philippine Air Force acquired 23 F-5A and B models in 1965. These aircraft, along with remanufactured Vought F-8 Crusaders, eventually replaced the Philippine Air Force's F-86 Sabre in the air defense and ground attack roles. In June 1967, the 10th FCS's surviving aircraft were supplied to the Air Force of South Vietnam, which previously had only Cessna A-37 Dragonfly and Douglas A-1 Skyraider attack aircraft. This new VNAF squadron was titled the 522nd. The President of Vietnam had originally asked for F-4 Phantoms used by the USA, but the VNAF flew primarily ground support as North Vietnamese forces employed no opposing aircraft over South Vietnam. When Bien Hoa was later overrun by North Vietnamese forces, several aircraft were captured and used operationally by the NVAF, in particular against Khmer Rouge. In view of the performance, agility, and size of the F-5, it might have appeared to be a good match against the similar MiG-21 in air combat. However, U.S. doctrine was to use heavy, faster and longer-range aircraft like the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief and McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II over North Vietnam. 41 F-5s were captured by the NVA when they defeated South Vietnam on April 30, 1975, and the USSR received a complete F-5E, along with various spare parts and support equipment. Aircraft would arrive in Poland and Russia for study of U.S. aviation technology, while others were decommissioned and put on display at museums in Vietnam. The F-5 was also adopted as an opposing forces, UP-4, aggressor for dissimilar training role because of its small size and performance similarities to the Soviet MiG-21. In realistic trials at Nellis AFB in 1977, the F-14 reportedly scored slightly better than a 2:1 kill ratio against the simpler F-5, while the F-15 scored slightly less. There is some contradiction of these reports. Another source reports that for the first 3 weeks of the test, the F-14S and F-15S were hopelessly outclassed and demoralized. After adapting to qualities of the F-5 and implementing rule changes to artificially favor long-range radar-guided missiles, the F-14S did slightly better than breaking even with the F-5S in non-1v1 engagements. The F-15S got almost 2:1. A 2012 Discovery Channel documentary Great Plains reported that in U.S. Air Force exercises, F-5 aggressor aircraft were competitive enough with more modern and expensive fighters to only be at small disadvantage in within visual range, WVR, combat. The F-5E served with the U.S. Air Force from 1975 until 1990, in the 64th Aggressor Squadron and 65th Aggressor Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, and with the 527th Aggressor Squadron at RAF Alconbury in the UK and the 26th Aggressor Squadron at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. The U.S. Marines purchased used F-5s from the Air Force in 1989 to replace their F-21s, which served with VMFT-401 at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma. The U.S. Navy used the F-5E extensively at the Naval Fighter Weapons School, Top Gun, when it was located at NAS Miramar, California. When Top Gun relocated to become part of the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center at NAS Fallon, Nevada, the command divested itself of the F-5, choosing to rely on VC-13, redesignated VFC-13 and which already used F-5s, to employ their F-5s as adversary aircraft. Former adversary squadrons such as VF-43 at NAS Oceana, VF-45 at NAS Key West, VF-126 at NAS Miramar, and VFA-127 at NAS Lemoore have also operated the F-5 along with other aircraft types in support of dissimilar air combat training, DACT. The U.S. Navy F-5 fleet continues to be modernized with 36 low-hour F-5E/FS purchased from Switzerland in 2006. These were updated as F-5N/FS with modernized avionics and other improved systems. Currently, the only U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps units flying the F-5 are VFC-13 at NAS Fallon, Nevada, VFC-111 at NAS Key West, Florida, and VMFT-401 at MCAS Yuma, Arizona. Currently, VFC-111 operates 18 Northrop F-5N/F Tiger IIS. 17 of these are single-seater F-5NS and the last is a twin-seater F-5F Franken Tiger, the product of grafting the older front half fuselage of an F-5F into the back half fuselage of a newer low-hours F-5E acquired from the Swiss Air Force. A total of 3 Franken Tigers were made. According to the FAA, there are 18 privately owned F-5s in the U.S., including Canadair CF-5DS. Brazil. In October 1974, the Brazilian Air Force, FAB, ordered 36 F-5E and 6 F-5B aircraft from Northrop for $72 million. The first 3 aircraft arrived on March 12, 1975. In 1988, FAB acquired 22 F-5E and 4 F-5F second-hand U.S. Air Force aggressor fighters. A total of 15 of these aircraft were part of the initial batch of 30 aircraft produced by Northrop. In 1990, FAB retired all remaining 5 F-5Bs. Later, they were sent to Brazilian museums around the country. In 2001, Elbit Systems and Embraer started work on a $230 million Brazilian F-5 modernization program, performed over an 8-year period, upgrading 46 F-5E/F aircraft, redesignated as F-5M and F-5FM. The modernization centered on several areas: new electronic warfare systems, the Grifo F radar, an air-to-air refueling system, in/GPS-based navigation, support for new weapons, targeting and self-defense systems, HOTAS, LCD displays, helmet-mounted displays, HMDs, radar warning receiver, encrypted communications, cockpit compatibility for night vision goggles, onboard oxygen generation system, OBUGs, and various new onboard computer upgrades. One important capability is the secure communication with R-99 airborne early warning platforms and ground stations. Externally, the new aircraft features a larger nose cone that accommodates the larger radar equipment. The first F-5M was handed over on September 21, 2005. On July 7, 2003, 4 Rafale Lightning III targeting pods were ordered at a cost of $13 million to be used on F-5M together with 3 Rafale Sky Shield jamming pods ordered on July 5, 2006 at a cost of $42 million. In 2009, FAB bought 8 single-seat and 3 twin-seat F-5F used aircraft from Jordan in a $21 million deal. These aircraft were built between 1975 and 1980. On April 14, 2011, a contract of $153 million was signed with Embraer and Elbit to modernize the additional F-5s bought from Jordan, and to supply one more flight simulator as a continuation of the contract signed in 2000. These F-5s will receive the same configuration as those from the initial 46 F-5s currently completing the upgrade process. The first delivery of this second batch of upgraded jet fighters is scheduled for 2013 with expected use to 2030. Ethiopia. Ethiopia received 10 F-5s and 2 F-5Bs from the U.S. starting in 1966. In addition to these, Ethiopia had a training squadron equipped with at least 8 Lockheed T-33 shooting stars. In 1970, Iran transferred at least 3 F-5s and Bs to Ethiopia. In 1975, another agreement was reached with the U.S. to deliver a number of military aircraft, including 14 F-5Es and 3 F-5Fs. Later in the same year 8 F-5Es were transferred while the others were embargoed and delivered to a U.S. Air Force aggressor squadron due to the changed political situation. The U.S. also withdrew its personnel and cut diplomatic relations. Ethiopian officers contracted a number of Israelis to maintain American equipment. The Ethiopian F-5 fighters saw combat action against Somali forces during the Ogaden War, 1977–1978. The main Somali fighter aircraft was the MiG-21MF delivered in the 1970s, supported by Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-17S delivered in the 1960s by the Soviet Union. Ethiopian F-5E aircraft were used to gain air superiority because they could use the AIM-9B air-to-air missile, while the F-5s were kept for air interdiction and air strike. During this period Ethiopian F-5Es went on training against Ethiopian F-5s and F-86 Sabres, simulating Somali MiG-21S and MiG-17S. On July 17, 1977, 2 F-5s flown by Israeli pilots were on combat air patrol near Harar, when 4 Somali MiG-21 MFs were detected nearby. In the engagement, 2 MiG-21s were shot down while the other 2 had a mid-air collision while avoiding an AIM-9B missile. The better-trained F-5 pilots swiftly gained air superiority over the Somali Air Force, shooting down a number of aircraft, while other Somali aircraft were lost to air defense and to incidents. However, at least 3 F-5s were shot down by air defense forces during attacks against supply bases in western Somalia. Iran. The Imperial Iranian Air Force, IIAF, received extensive U.S. equipment in the 1960s and 1970s. Iran received its first 11 F-5s and 2 F-5Bs in February 1965, which were then declared operational in June 1965. Ultimately, Iran received 104 F-5s and 23 F-5Bs by 1972. From January 1974, with the first squadron of 28 F-5Fs, Iran received a total of 166 F-5E/Fs and 15 additional RF-5s, with deliveries ending in 1976. While receiving the F-5E and F, Iran began to sell its F-5A and B inventory to other countries, including Ethiopia, Turkey, Greece, and South Vietnam. By 1976, many had been sold, except for several F-5Bs retained for training purposes. F-5s were also used by the IIAF's aerobatic display team, the Golden Crown. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the new Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force, IRIAF, was partially successful at keeping Western fighters in service during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, and the simple F-5 had a good service readiness until late in the war. Initially, Iran took spare parts from foreign sources. Later it was able to have its new aircraft industry keep the aircraft flying. IRIAF F-5s were heavily involved, flying air-to-air and air-to-ground sorties. Iranian F-5s took part in air combats with Iraqi Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-21, Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-23, Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-25, Su-20/22, Mirage F-1, and Super Etendards. The exact combat record is not known, with many differing claims from Iraqi, Iranian, Western, and Russian sources. Also, many of the IRIAF's confirmed air-to-air kills were attributed to the Revolutionary Guards for political reasons. There are reports that an IRIAF F-5E, piloted by Major Yadallah Javidpour, shot down a MiG-25 on August 6, 1983. Russian sources state that the first confirmed kill of a MiG-25 occurred in 1985. During the first years of service, Iranian F-5 fighter aircraft had the advantage in missile technology, using advanced versions of the IR-seeking Sidewinder, later lost with deliveries of new missiles and fighters to Iraq. Iran currently produces an indigenous aircraft, the Sayajet, which is built on the same platform as the F-5. Kenya. Starting on October 16, 2011, during Operation Lindanchi, Kenyan Air Force F-5s are supporting the Kenyan forces fighting in Somalia against al-Shabaab Islamists, bombing targets inside Somalia and spearheading the ground forces. Malaysia. In 1975, the Royal Malaysian Air Force received 14 F-5Es and 2 F-5Bs. In 1982, 4 F-5Fs were received, and the 2 F-5Bs already in Malaysian service were transferred to the Royal Thai Air Force. In 1983, RMAF received 2 RF-5E Tiger I. Subsequently, 2 F-5Es and a F-5F were ordered as attrition replacement. The F-5E was the first supersonic fighter in Royal Malaysian Air Force service, and it replaced the former RAF CAC Sabre as Royal Malaysian Air Force's primary air defense fighter throughout the 1980s and early 90s. It also served in secondary ground attack role beside the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk. 2 F-5Es and 1 F-5F were lost in the accident, with 2 fatalities. In 2000, all the RMAF F-5s were deactivated, but reactivated in 2003 as the Tactical Air Reconnaissance Squadron and Reserve. Several upgrade packages were proposed to extend the service life of the aircraft, but none were taken. In 2015, the F-5s was pulled out of service, but some were kept in storage. Mexico. In 1982, the Mexican Air Force received 10 F-5Es and 2 F-5Fs after the purchase of 24 IAIKFIR-C.1 was blocked by the U.S., because the KFIR used the American-produced J-79 engine. These fighters complemented the Lockheed T-33 and de Havilland Vampire Mk.I, received much earlier, two of the first combat jet aircraft in Mexico. The F-5 gave Mexico its first supersonic platform and saw the formation of Air Squadron 401. On September 16, 1995, after more than 30 military parade flights without incidents, an F-5E collided in mid-air with three Lockheed T-33s during the military parade for the independence of Mexico. A total of 10 deaths occurred. As of September 2016, the Mexican Air Force only has 3 F-5 Tigers that are operational and combat-ready. Norway. The Royal Norwegian Air Force received 108 Freedom Fighters, 16 RF-5A, 78 F-5A, and 14 F-5B. The first 64 were received as military aid. They were in use by several squadrons, the first and last being 336 Squadron receiving the first aircraft in February 1966, formal handing over ceremony a month later, and deactivating in August 2000. 3 aircraft were kept flying until 2007, serving with Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace for tests in the Eye of the Tiger program, developing a new seeker head for Naval Strike Missile and Joint Strike Missile. The aircraft received under military aid were handed off to Greece and Turkey. Of the aircraft bought by the Norwegian government, 9 were used in exchange with U.S. authorities for submarines of the Kobben class. In October 2011, 5 F-5 single-seaters were given to aircraft maintenance schools around the country, including Skedsmo, Sola, Bod, and Bardufoss High Schools, and the Royal Norwegian Air Force's Training Center at Christ.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.